Hey guys, welcome to the Dude Seriously Show. I'm Jonathan.
Hey, I'm Tim.
Hi, Benjamin.
I'm Michael.
And we're talking about Thor the Dark World tonight. So, what did you guys think?
For me, it was an improvement on the first Thor in a lot of ways, because I was really disappointed with Thor having the usual trope of being depowered in the first one. And I know we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about this, but he's essentially Thor this movie instead of Donald Blake or whatever.
He's more Thor? I'm going to borrow the line when he's talking to Malekith that he says, for all that power, I thought you'd hit harder. Well, Marvel, when you got the guy that Stan Lee created to be the most powerful, I thought you'd present him a little more powerful than you have. As you said, though, I do agree, much better than the first. My opinion, nowhere near the bottom of the list that everybody seems to make it out to be.
I totally agree with that.
Well, I'm going to follow off and say this is probably my second least favorite Marvel film.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, I like this movie. There are parts of it that are good, but just overall, Thor the Dark World just doesn't deliver on a lot of points. Some of the points that you guys literally just said, I totally agree with, and some more that we'll get into. But overall, this one ranks pretty low for me.
I liked it in that it's a good second chapter. You have the origin story out of the way. So it's like, all right, we get it. He's already Thor. Well, he's always been Thor, but we don't have to be introduced to this character. It's time to hit the ground running, and I think this movie, kind of hits the ground running and takes off, and it's a good middle chapter.
Now, I will agree with that. It's definitely a good middle chapter because in the first Thor film, you get Thor, but basically just in looks only because he doesn't really do anything that, the creators set out to build him to be. And in this film, we get more of that. Not quite there, but it's an
improvement.
They gave him a little more edge. He didn't look so, hair commercial Thor like in the first one.
The eyebrows in the first
then
one.
almost fade in like he's got no brows.
More
And
natural.
He looks like he's got a blow dryer in his back pocket. I actually liked he looked more warrior-esque or more, at least a little more edgy.
Apparently that was his real hair in this one, too.
Well,
He
the
actually
fur
grew it out.
part, but I know he did wear extensions. Yeah.
Okay.
So the opening battle of this movie, not the opening battle with Thor and Sif and everybody, the opening battle with the Dark Elves and Bor. It's shot really dark. It's almost hard to see what's going on.
Well, the movie is
It is
called
The
Dark,
Dark
World.
World.
Yeah.
I get that, and I suppose if this movie was as bright as, say, Doctor Strange or something, that people would make that joke in the opposite way.
Or if it was shot in the Arizona desert like the first one, where it's bright and sunny.
True.
Yeah. Okay.
This
So
one
it's
was in
almost
Iceland,
Yeah, it's
actually.
almost like a contrast in a lot of ways to the first movie, in my opinion.
Yeah. Was this really shot in Iceland?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it was. They
That's where you get
used
that
some
black soil
Right.
and
Yeah.
used some actual Norwegian locations, of course, London and all that.
That's
So
cool.
I liked that because it was okay. A lot of these stories come from this part of the world, so
Yeah.
it makes it a little more authentic.
And back to that battle that you were talking about, to me, I feel like I've seen that before. It felt like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or whatever. It didn't feel that original, that part of that battle. But when it segued into Thor appearing and battling, that's when the movie picked up for me.
So in that opening battle with Thor, he shows up, and it's awesome how he shows up. Just Heimdall beams him in the middle of the battle, and he just shows up and starts wrecking house off the bat. I love that little exchange with him and Lady Sif. There's just that
the tension
butting
is
head
great, man. It's great.
so good, and
It's
you
great.
know when you have that tension, you've got something going.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely. Love Sif.
Yeah, and she
don't,
was.
man?
You don't?
Who don't? Who
Oh,
don't?
I thought you said you don't.
No, I said who don't.
Nah, that's not him.
No.
Yeah, I don't know how you couldn't. I mean,
It's like his version of Agent Carter.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Especially because they never get to be together,
Exactly.
which is kind of where I'm leading with this.
Okay.
In that opening battle with Sif, there's just that amazing tension where she catches that arrow to save him, and even Odin says to him,
Oh, yeah.
maybe you should take what's right in front of you.
Well, there's that banter they have back and forth. And
Yeah, absolutely.
The chemistry is there. The good tension is there. Thor, I just want to say, what's wrong with you? He just friend zones her and walks away.
Seriously. I mean,
Oh.
dude, seriously.
Dude, seriously.
Dude, seriously.
I mean,
Dude,
I just-
seriously, everybody wants to see that.
They do, literally.
I mean, he's got to move past Queen Amidala and
Oh.
get in on the Sif action.
It's all about the Sif.
now, to be fair, if the Queen Amidala in these films were Keira Knightley,
I'm still going with Sif.
I think so
was
too,
with
honestly.
Sif. You know who I would pick over all of them? It's Darcy.
Oh.
Oh my god.
Look at you. Still all muscly and everything. How's space?
Space is fine.
But I am a fan of Two Broke Girls, so that ties in.
Okay. And I know Hemsworth had talked about they wanted to do more of the hand-to-hand combat in this and see what he could do, up close as opposed from a distance.
Sure.
You saw a lot of that in the other films. And I think you get that in that opening battle. And you get to see Sif, the Warriors 3, they all kind of get their moment in that battle.
The rock creature is actually from the one that he destroys, is actually from the very first appearance of Thor.
Yes.
From his Journey into Mystery number 83. And like they're actually on the cover. These,
Right.
rock monsters with the big heads.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that rock monster, I've heard this great theory online that the rock monster that Thor destroys is actually Korg's dad.
Oh wow!
Because
I never thought of that.
Yeah, because I saw it, I was like, that does look a lot like Korg.
He is a Cronin.
Right, and
Yeah.
Korg says,
Oh, well, I tried to start a revolution but didn't print enough pamphlets, so hardly anyone turned up, except for my mum and her boyfriend, who I hate.
hey, well,
Right.
for the mom to have a boyfriend, his dad would have to be gone, and so...
That's an awesome thing.
Someone
great.
decapitated my dad, and so Mom had to get a boyfriend.
Yeah, that line got cut from Ragnarok, but
Maybe in the deleted scenes.
Yeah, possibly.
I can totally see that. It's interesting because last week in Iron Man 3, we talked about these films being consequences.
Yeah.
Avengers happens, and now these characters deal with the consequences. Of course, next week we'll talk about in Winter Soldier how S.H.I.E.L.D. reacts to what happens. The security gets upped. In this, Loki's paying the consequence now. And to some extent, that has reverberations throughout Asgard, but I just really love that it's not like, okay, Avengers happened and that's the end. They really do pick up. And to me, Phase 2 is really just where things start to tighten.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Phase 1, as great as it was for getting the ball rolling, the movies do kind of all fall in their own corners. And then it all comes together for Avengers, but it's a linear after Avengers. And I really feel like they just keep getting better and better and better.
I did feel like this one was the weakest in that Phase 2 of setting anything up for future movies. I mean, it basically, the only things I would take positive for that are, okay, you get the Infinity Stone, the Ether, and it picks up directly after Avengers with Loki coming home.
True.
That is one thing I did not like, is what does it bring to the table for future stories?
Well, just to counter that, I think that the two things it does bring to the table are Loki, of course, taking over as Odin, which we see the payoff for that in Ragnarok, and that unbelievable post-credit scene where we learn about the Infinity Stones by name
Collector.
for the first time. I'm a big fan of the Collector. I love him. I'm ready for the Guardians of the Galaxy episode. I've got lots to say about the Collector.
But Nicio is awesome in general.
He's great. And he's just so weird, God, I just love him.
And
but
Sif's in that scene too. So.
That's
More
just
Sif.
another reason
Yeah,
to
more
love
Sif.
that scene. But in that post-credit scene, I remember seeing this film in theaters with my friends, and of course, by this time we knew Thanos was what they're building toward. And you could assume Infinity Stones would be involved, but we'd not heard them by name yet. I remember being in the theater with my friends and sitting for that post-credit scene and seeing the Collector, and I was like, oh my god, like the Collector is a really obscure character. And it was really exciting for that reason, but then we see him show up again in Guardians. And again, these Phase 2 films are really just where it starts to build for me.
Was it Volstagg that said it was not safe to have so many Infinity Stones
in one
together?
place.
And if you really think about it, at one point, Loki had 2 Infinity Stones. I mean, you find out later he didn't know he had it, but he had real potential. If he had had the Ether, he would have had 3 stones himself.
Yep.
I wonder if in Infinity War he'll find out how close he was and if that will play on his character at all. To realize that Thanos used him as a pawn, like, big time. Not just, oh, be my henchman, go get this Infinity Stone and you can rule Earth. But he bargained an Infinity Stone and Loki's been in contact with 3 Infinity Stones. With the Aether in this film, I'm definitely interested to see how they're going to explain that as an Infinity Stone, because they're going to have to dedicate, even if it's just a couple seconds of screen time, to showing how this fluidy mist becomes something that can go
Solid.
in the gauntlet.
And the scene where Thor puts the lightning to it when Malekith's getting it out of Jane. it kind of hard. It was almost reminded me of the T-1000 when the liquid metal shatters and it all kind of comes back together. They were kind of hard
It
in that
solidifies.
scene. Yeah. So maybe that's how it's a stone, but they do need to explain that.
Yeah, it probably would have been just easier to have it be a stone, and maybe like when it possesses Jane or whatever, maybe like the stone just like becomes part of her, or maybe it would be like Vision instead of
yeah.
forehead.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice how she reacts every time someone comes to confront her when she has the ether inside of her? There's this big explosion. They all get blown away, and she just kind of lays back down. Like
It knocks her out.
No, she lays down gently every time. Every time I saw her do that, I'm like, that seems like lazy acting to me.
Well, it's no surprise.
Jane Foster.
It's no surprise Natalie Portman was kind of done with these films.
It came across. If you watch and see how she reacts when those things happen, it's just sort of a.
Maybe that was her little jab of being like,
It seemed like
I'm done
half-hearted.
with these movies.
I've always thought that was just such a waste of time in this one and the previous Thor film. That character, it doesn't go anywhere.
And you know, she's been in a lot of stuff. She's a big name. There's a lot
Yeah,
of big names
absolutely.
in this movie, in a lot of the Marvel movies, but particularly in this one. And she, like you said, it's almost like she's phoning it in.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
She's just there. I do like the fact that you see Odin, and Anthony Hopkins, huge name. And he didn't do a lot in the first one, but this one, you definitely see a lot more of Odin. I thought that was cool. And he's really not a nice guy. Like, you learn. You see him and Thor arguing, and Thor compares him to the Dark Elves. Like, how are you any different? You're willing to sacrifice your own people. It's all about you. It's what can we do for the people?
And it's so interesting too because in one of the last conversations between Odin and Frigga, Frigga looks at him and says, "You always were such a great liar."
Yeah.
Which the next installment, Ragnarok,
Everything has been a lie, basically.
Wow.
everything.
Yeah.
And then again, going back to picking fights and things like that. Of course, the Odin we see in the first two Thor films, he's left that life behind. But how did he get to the place where he is?
Right. Which makes me, I felt like in this, y'all will laugh at this reference, but Thor reminds me of George Washington in this.
Okay.
He does not want to rule. He's not about, I want all this power. He wants to live his life, but he is needed to rule and to lead and to fight. And they basically recruit him for that. He knows it's what he's got to do.
And in the end, at the end scene, when he thinks he's talking to Odin, he all he asks for is to have his life.
Right.
He doesn't want to rule. He's even willing to give Mjolnir back.
Yep.
So that battle scene at the end where Thor loses his hand, man, I remember seeing that in the theaters and totally believing that's what went down.
Oh, everybody did, I think.
was shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could hear a pin drop in my theater when that happened.
Yeah, and it was actually kind of graphic for a Marvel movie.
you really
you could
see
see down in it. Yeah, yeah.
And
like-
kind of a nod to another middle film, Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Of Luke getting his hand.
All of
Second
the
movie,
films.
darker movie, losing the hand.
Middle
How
chapter.
about that?
So we got to talk about the Dark Elves.
Of course.
The costume design of the Dark Elves looks really great. You mentioned that they have those big, creepy bug eye contacts.
Look like sunglasses almost, and like the Dark Elves are going to go to the beach.
It's probably too light at the
that's a
beach,
whole
though.
different movie there.
So Stellan Skarsgård is back in this film as Eric Selvig. We saw him in the first Thor, and we kind of
Avengers. He's in Avengers.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but we laughed because in the first Thor, he's like the only person that's ever heard of Asgard mythology.
Right.
And so we see him in the first Avengers, where Loki uses him, mind control, and then he's in this again, and he's just a buffoon in this movie.
Well, you got to think he had his mind messed with. Maybe it kind of blew some circuits.
As
or
he
something.
said,
Yeah, that's what I
I've
was
had a
kinda
god
saying.
in my brain.
That was what I took from that, because once he kind of, I don't remember exactly what brought him back around, but something actually straightened him back out, and he was okay again.
He's getting to talk about how the convergence happens and all the realms line up.
And that's with Stan Lee.
Any questions? Can I have my shoe back?
Can I have my shoe back, please? And I just want to say, can I have my Thor appear on film, please?
Idris Elba is a badass, and he doesn't get to do much in any of the Thor movies, but except for in this one scene when they're attacking, he takes down a spaceship with a couple of knives. Now that ship, another one of those ships can crash through the temple and take out all the columns and Thor and everybody
Decapitate Thor's grandfather.
and they can all fly it back out again, but that one ship gets taken out with a pair of knives.
That's Heimdall, man.
How awesome is that scene when Thor and Loki are walking down the corridor, and every time they pass a beam, like Loki changes into the Guard, then he turns Thor into Sif, and then he turns into Captain America.
Well, and Ben and I were talking about this earlier that originally it was Loki actually in the suit.
Oh, this is better. Ooh. The costume's a bit much. So tight. But the confidence. I can feel a righteousness surging. Hey, you want to have a rousing discussion about truth, honor, patriotism? God bless America.
You can see that. I mean,
It's like the special features.
Yeah.
But I guess it just didn't work. They felt like they really needed to put Evans in there, and he sells it pretty well. He acts a little more hammy than he would normally as Cap, so it's kind of
works. It's weird though because they never shot that together.
Dude. Oh, sorry. Seriously. Sorry, I said that totally wrong.
And I heard that Chris Evans actually came in and did his version of what Tom Hiddleston had done in the suit. So it's sort of like Captain America impersonating Loki, impersonating Captain America.
Exactly.
So talking about Jane Foster, there are a couple scenes in this movie where I literally just roll my eyes, and one of them is when Thor and Jane are off in that, forgotten, abandoned place, and her phone rings.
Now we're trapped here.
It's not me.
Hello?
How's she gonna have cell service? First of all, on another planet, but she's also in a cave.
On top of all of that,
Yeah.
how has her phone stayed charged for days?
It's the magic of Hollywood.
Maybe she had it on airplane mode.
There is that option.
Then how did you
She
get the
had
call?
like a fire stick that she could recharge with.
The only thing I can think of on the call is that they're in that area where it connects you to Earth. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not saying I like it.
Well, she knew what the Soul Forge was when they were kind of checking her out when she first got there. So maybe they have some chargers. I don't know.
Who knows? Maybe she turned it off and then turned it back. I don't know.
Do you guys have a USB adapter? I just need to plug in.
Sure, go to the Apple store. It's on the left side of Asgard over there.
Welcome to the Apple Store.
And there's dark elves running around in there running the apples.
So, all in all, how do we feel about Thor: The Dark World?
When you look at other people's rankings of the Marvel movies, it is always the bottom one. I don't think that. I think, I'm not going to say it's like in the top 10. I would never say that, but I actually enjoyed it a lot more than that. But as we've said in some of the other reviews, it's hard to hate a Marvel movie. You really got to nitpick to hate a Marvel movie.
I will agree with what you said. It is nowhere near the bottom of the list like it's made out to be. Certainly not a top 5. I don't know if I'd even put it in top 10. It is far above the first one. You get a lot more action. The story doesn't take as long to develop. You get to go more into the Asgard aspect, as we talked about. The effects are better action, and
Thor is Thor more.
Thor is more Thor. I wouldn't say he's the Thor I want to see, but I enjoyed it a lot more for that. There are things, of course, I have issues with.
Again, it's hard to hate a Marvel movie. It really is. I really liked what you said in the Cap review about how when you go to a Marvel movie, you just know you're going to get a quality film. And this film is definitely quality. Although it's not my favorite, there are far worse. At the end of the day, I still like this movie enough to own it on DVD and watch it periodically. And I don't know, it was fun to watch for tonight's review, but it's definitely not my favorite.
If I were to rank them, it'd probably fall somewhere in the middle. I thought it was a fun movie. Thought it was great.
Well said. I think the biggest weakness for it is you see how great all the others are, and it just doesn't live up to that one.
So that's Thor: The Dark World. Overall, some generally positive reviews, I guess, except for me, but
How about it's good but not great? Fair enough?
it's good, but not great. Thanks for tuning in tonight, guys. We're on the road to Infinity War, so we'll have another episode up next week. Dude, seriously, we'll see you next week. Dude, seriously.